Hello students, I hope you all are fine, and in this video we are going to discuss one very important topic to work with databases, that is entity framework. And entity framework is actually a collection of classes, collection of libraries that are given to us to work with databases. And this collection of libraries is built on the top of ADO.NET, and ADO.NET is built on the top of other technologies like object link enabled databases, open database connectivity, and SQL classes to work with SQL Server, and link to work with any collections that are supported by iQueryable and iEnumerable interfaces. With the help of link, we also work with data sets. Also, with the help of link, we also work with XML. So we did a study about the link into the previous lectures, but today we have to focus on the entity framework. It means with the help of entity framework, we can work with these databases also. But in between entity framework and these databases, you see we have ADO.NET. So entity framework is abstract level framework, very high level framework that is also known as object relational mapper. You see, entity framework is also known as object relational mapping. You see, object relational mapping means a mapping of objects, in memory objects with the databases, with the tables of databases, with the relations that we used to create into the databases. And we used to also call a relation to a table. So table is also relation, you see, so that's why we are saying here it's the object relational mapping. So the idea is to separate the business logic from the SQL. So instead of working with SQL, we have to focus on our business logic. And second idea is actually to treat tables as in-memory objects and to work with those objects. You see, as we used to work normally into our application, as we used to work with objects of classes, you see. So we used to map our classes with the tables, and then we used to create objects, and then we used to work with database tables directly with the help of methods and properties that we have created into the tables, you see. So entity framework is object relational mapping framework that is built on the top of ADO.NET. It means entity framework is using ADO.NET at the back end, but at the front end we are using the classes of entity framework, and we don't have to write SQL structured query language. And we did same thing into the link also, if you remember, when we were stating link to SQL. In that we didn't write any kind of SQL query, but we directly used link queries, and we actually invoked methods and constructs and lambdas that are given to us in the link query over there. I hope all the points are clear right now. So it's very easy actually to use entity framework. Just we have to explore the libraries, and we have to understand a little bit of concepts, and then we have to go into the depth also. Definitely, if we will practice a lot, then we'll be getting more knowledge about the entity framework also. Well, object relational mapper that maps classes, objects with database tables, database relations, and with the help of entity framework, developers treat database tables as objects into a memory, and then we used to update the data of object. By updating the data of object, we can update the data of a table, and if we are changing the structure of object, then by changing the structure of object, we can change the structure of a table of a database also. So that can be done without SQL, you see. But it doesn't mean the SQL is not being used. SQL will be used at the back end, you see, by the with the help of ADO.NET. But we don't have to work with SQL. We only have to, you see, use the methods and properties, and we only have to work with the schema of object and the data of object also. So entity framework will be responsible to, you see, uh, keep a close eye on the state of the object, and after keeping that, after understanding if there is a change into a database object, into an object that we have created in memory, then we can update the actual record into a database table also. So it's very easy. Let's see how entity framework is giving us different features to work with databases. So with the help of entity framework, you can see in the start of visual programming course, I did give this example to you people. We can create a code directly from the table, and we can create a table directly from the code also. So that is also possible. See, it depends on the developer that how he wants to develop the application and in which style he actually is expert, or the which style he prefers. So entity framework gives us three flows to work with databases. The first flow is database first. And database first, it means you create a database at first, and after that you create EDMX, that is entity data model, supported by XML. And after creating EDMX, you create code, you create data model classes, and then you create a code to work with the data model classes. Second is model first. You create entity data model, and then you create database from the entity data model. Entity data model is like an entity diagram. You have already studied entity diagrams into the object-oriented design. So from EDMX, you can create a database, and from EDMX, you can also create a code, data model classes, and then you can write a code to work with the data model classes, and to from there you can work with the database also. Third flow is code first. You are writing data model classes at first, and then you are creating the database from the data model classes. So for the first time, you created data model classes, and then you created generated database from the data model classes. And now the database is generated. So for the second time, when you are going to work with that application, this database was already generated. And then again, if you want to modify this database, that is now existing database, you can work with model classes, and you can update the existing database also. I hope all the flows are very clear. We will work with every flow one by one. So the first flow is code first, a new database workflow. You see, code first, code, code first code, and create the model classes, then generate the database. That is the new database. And the second flow will be in this style. In code first style will be existing database and generated model classes. So code first, new database. There's no database available. We are going to create model classes directly into the application, and then we will generate the database tables from the classes here. So no database exists, and we are going to write the model classes in C sharp, and then we will generate the database, and then we will write the code to work with the table of a database. So there are some steps. You see, create an application, create model classes. A model class is a class, you see, that uh, that will be responsible, whose object will be responsible to hold the information of a particular record of a table. If there's a table that is users table, so in the users table we can store the information of multiple users, and information of each user can be stored in memory in a single object. You see? So if there are 10 records into a users table, then definitely we have to create 10 objects of a users class, and then we'll be able to hold the information of 10 objects of a users table into the 10 records of a users table into a 10 objects of a users class. So that will be the users class will be the model class. You see, step 3 is create a derived context. Derived context is actually a class that we used to create by making any class with any name, by making that class as a child of a DB context class. And DB context class is a class given to us by the entity framework, and that class is responsible for doing the backend work. And that class will be responsible for creating the tables, you see, and that class will be responsible for retrieving the data of tables, and putting that data into the collections that we will be using into the application. So the backend work will be performed by the DB context class, that will be the parent class of derived class. Step 4 is read and write. It's your choice, whatever you want to do. So if you want to read data from the database table, you can do that. If you want to update, if you want to delete, if you want to do that DML operations, you can do that also. So the first step, create a console application. You can also create a Windows Forms application, but for the sake of example, I have actually used console application here. Second step is create model classes. You see, I created a model class blog and another model class post. So this application is related with the blog and post application, blogging application. So you create a blog and then we used to post, you see, any kind of article over there, and or any other thing. So public class blog ID, and you see name of blog, and then post ID, title of post, content of post, and blog ID, to which blog this post is associated, you see. So this blog ID is actually, that is the primary key of this blog class, is used as a foreign key into this post class, and this post class also has a post ID that will be the primary key of this post class. So if you imagine here, these classes use is actually these classes are giving us the structure of database table. So for this blog class, we'll be creating the blog table with the two columns, blog ID and name, and for this post class, we'll be creating the post table with four columns, post ID, title, content, and blog ID. Third step is to create a derived context, and for derived context, we use DB context class as a parent class of our class, and DB context class is available into the package of entity framework. So normally we do not have entity framework into the project that we used to create. So for that purpose, we used to install entity framework after creating the project. So I have written here the steps: installation of entity frameworks, libraries, and references. Right click on project name, select manage NuGet package. NuGet package is actually extension. Nowadays in 2017, Visual Studio NuGet package manager extension is, you see, built in into the Visual Studio. But if you are using any other version of Visual Studio, you can also install manage NuGet package extension, you see, from the extensions menu. Install entity framework from online tab. After opening manage NuGet packages extension, you can install entity framework. So when the entity framework will be installed, you will be able to see the package of entity framework into the references portion. So after installing entity framework, we are going to use the entity namespace from the data. You see namespace from the system namespace. And third is, when we have imported the entity namespace, we are creating our derived context. So this blogging context class is actually a derived context, and that is the child of DB context. And into the blogging context, we actually created two collections, blogs and posts, two properties. You see, blogs is actually a collection, a property that will be holding the blogs information, you see, and post is also property will be holding the blogs information. You see, the data type of blogs is DB set, and DB set is also a class given to us by the entity framework. And this is generic DB set, as we did study into the last video of generics. So this DB set is actually like a array list, you see, a collection. So DB set is actually a collection, and collection of what? Blog, and name of this collection is blogs. And this DB set is will be holding the objects of post class, and post multiple objects means collection of objects, and the name of that collection is post. So that's it. And after that, we have to read and write, you see. So what we are doing here, we created a line using, and after that, inside the parenthesis of using, we created a variable db, and that is the object of blogging context, and this blogging context is the name of this class, you see, that we have created here. So we are creating this object inside the parenthesis of using, you see. And using is actually a statement that helps us to release the resources of this variable when we are worked with, when we have completed our work with this variable, you see. So this is like closing of connection. Uh, so we are being actually proactive here. So sometimes it happens developers used to forget the forget closing of connection, uh, and connections used to be opened over there, but with this line we don't have to worry about the closing of connection. So when the block of using, you see, when the control execution control uh, is going to exit the block of using a statement, the resources of the variable that we have created inside these parentheses will be released automatically. So don't worry about releasing the resources of this db variable. You see, console.writeLine, enter a name of block. When this code will be executed, definitely this code we will write into the main method. So console.writeLine, enter a name of blog. Uh, and enter a name of blog will be printed over there. Then we are actually asking for the name of blog from the user, console.readline. Then we are creating a blog object, so object of a blog class, and the name that we have actually obtained from the user, that name is assigned to the name variable of a blog object. Then we are adding this blog object into the collection blogs. And if you remember, this is the collection blogs. So we are adding blog object into the blogs collection. Collection belongs to the DB object. DB is object of what? Object of blogging context. And then what we are doing, save the changes. You see, whatever the records that we have into the blogs collection, put the data of those uh, objects into the table, you see. And that table will be created according to these names, you see. So whatever the collections that you will create into the blogging context, actually those tables will be created into the database automatically. So you put the name blogs here and another name is post here. So with this, two tables will be created automatically into a database with the names blogs and post. And the schema of table will be according to this blog class, and the schema of post table will be according to this post class. So if you remember what you put into the blog class, in blog class you put 2 columns and there will be 2 columns into the table, and in post class you put 4 columns and there will be the post column into the table. Clear? And you see, you executed save changes method. This will update the blogs table according to blogs collection. And when the record is added into the blogs table of a database, now you are reading that. So how you are reading that? With the help of a blogs collection again. So if you wanted to add a record, you added it into the blogs collection. If you want to read the records, you are again reading from the blogs collection. You don't have to actually write the code of SQL. Everything is with the help of methods and the link query. So from B in db.blogs, db from db collection, uh, from db object, from the blogs collection, select the blogs after ordering the blogs, you see. And how to order the blog, the sequence is created according to the name, you see. So all the blogs that have names starting with a, those will be the blogs that you will be seeing into the output at first. So for each variable, item and query, and after that you are actually printing the blog id and item name. So that's it. That is actually code first. You wrote the code at first, you executed that code, and the database will be created. Inside the database, object will be added, a record will be added into the table of a database, and after that you have actually read that record also, and you printed the result into the. I hope you will practice this, and we'll meet into the next video. Thank you.